And welcome back to Survivor 46 and 46. This is day 42. Marianne just won Survivor 42. And I mean, I've sent the video to you two that are joining me today, but everyone that I was around that night, everyone that's a friend of mine that's a Survivor fan knows how I reacted in the moment. And I'm going to talk about how the season has actually impacted my actual life. But today we're joined once again by Julia making her returns. Last time we were here was Vanuatu?
Guatemala.
Okay. And then we have Chappelle from the Recap Kickback joining us for the first time. I really appreciate it. And we're just going to go right into it. Chappelle, when the season first came out for you, we are now 2 seasons into the 50% BIPOC of CBS shows. We're in the new era where we're past COVID. There's a lot of changes that are happening. Coming off of 41, what was your interest level for this season?
I was very interested. I think that 41, we saw the impact of the BIPOC, realignment CBS did. We saw, a person of color win that season. We saw a good showing for a lot of the people of color in that season. And so, of course, I wanted to see what they would do with number 42, mostly because I feel like, okay, you got the people of color there, but you have to now learn how to tell their stories. Erica wins as a person of color, as a Canadian, and, you don't get a lot from her. So I'm like, all right. Take 2, let's bring it back, drop the 4, just keep the take 2 and try to tell this story a little bit better. And I think 42 delivered in a way that 41 just did not.
Okay. And Julia, same question, but more on the end of, were you a fan of 41? And did you feel like, because they filmed these back to back, did you feel like, okay, well, it's going to be the same shit, different toilet. We're going to get the same exact thing, whether you liked it or not. And I liked 41, but you just feel like, okay, this is just going to be a stale retread of what we just got.
Yes, I was not the biggest fan of 41. I loved the characters themselves, but I feel like, as Chappelle said, how they chose to tell stories. I felt like I was watching an episode of America's Got Talent, where every time we would see someone on, we would get their tragic backstory, which came to it, which again is so important to tell people's stories, but it didn't feel like the Survivor we know. I feel like they did a lot better job of telling stories this season and making it in a more organic way than they did in 41, which I really appreciated.
Oh, and I mentioned this yesterday, as far as, especially with 41 and 42, I almost give a pass, personal pass to it, because all of these people have legitimate PTSD because of everything that everyone had gone through that past year. So when we're getting their backstories in those 2 seasons especially, I remember watching both of them in the moment and just being like, yep, I get it. I get everything. When Mariah's talking about her brother being the first person to die in New York, and I live in New York, and when the world shut down, that was a real scary moment for me. You're hearing all these things, and I feel like 41 and 42 get a pass for me as far as the tragic backstory element that I feel like a lot of people do kind of have strong opinions about this new era of Survivor. I do agree with you, though, that, this season it did feel more organic. It felt like, when we don't get Lindsay's backstory until the Do or Die episode, and we're going to talk all about that. But it didn't feel like they were throwing it at us all at once. It felt like when it happened, it's because they're the main character of this episode. Except for the Jonathan thing, which we can just get out of the way now. Jonathan was abused, and it's played as very wholesome. Well, my dad at 3 years old would make me and my brother wake up and walk up a mountain and come down, and whoever lost had to do it 3 more times. Jonathan went through a lot, but it was played as inspirational, which wasn't a fan of. I don't think that it's a stale retread of 41. I feel like, yes, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of instances that it's similar to 41, but I feel like there's a lot to attach ourselves to, despite the twists. So Chappelle, we get here and we get basically the same twists that we got last time. Did you feel like any of them worked a lot better this season, or is it still just like, okay, like please just get rid of this now?
That's hard because there's some things that I never want to see ever again. And then there's some things that now that I've moved away from them a little bit, I'm like, I don't hate that. I don't hate that too much. So the first challenge, I think, is where we get we're running the challenge, but we have these 3 people who now have to come up with a joint lie in order to get something done. And they pour the mud on them and all this other stuff. And it's real goofy in the moment, but we haven't really gone back and done that in a while. I'm like, that didn't kill anybody. That wasn't awful, so I wouldn't mind stuff like that. But then on the other hand, yeah. And he goes, yeah, I am bleeding. I was like, no, you're not. Why would you say that? Because now you have to account for the blood. Stop it. Anyway, so you go from that to maybe challenges or twists where you have to say these, these ridiculous phrases. I'm fine with never having to do that again. That didn't bother. Like, I'm good. I thought it was very interesting the way those twists played out this time. The phrases, the way Mike handled it versus the way Marianne and Dre were handling it. So, it was like, it's like a mixed bag. It's like, was it amazing? No. But again, it didn't kill the show. It just kind of gave them something else that they could tweak later on. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw some of these twists coming back for Survivor 50.
There are some, and I'm sure we'll talk about the ones that we would want to see back for 50. Julia, going off of that, the fact that, and I've talked about this a lot over the last 42 days, there are certain seasons that have negative Pearl Islands has a battle back, and everyone looks at that as like a upper tier season. Cagayan has a quit. People look at that as upper tier season. David vs. Goliath has a quit. Upper tier season. For 42, I feel like, unlike 41, the twists and all the advantages do not hinder the season this time around. And I think it's rescued, and the 41 cast is very good. I said it yesterday. I feel like this 42 cast is the best cast that we've had since 37. And if you want to go past, before 37, it would have been a while since we've had a cast that I can sit there and name you one quality about every single person. Everyone was very distinct. So what do you think makes in the larger Survivor community, what do you think makes 42 better than 41 in the eyes of the casual fan, or this, what I'm saying?
I think when it comes to like the casual fan, it's 2 things. I think the main one is how the like big twists and advantages kind of play into the overall story. Like when you get to 41, obviously the hourglass is made into a much bigger deal than it is, because it's really like the first big thing we see from our eventual winner. But when we get it here, the hourglass is something that just happens like super fast and is like our second.
It's not 2 episodes.
Yeah, it's not something that they make into a giant part of the show. So I feel like it's these twists that people necessarily don't really stick with us as much as they did when we're watching 41. And as well as what I mentioned before of like the storytelling and then these difficult conversations that the new era likes to have, which I think are super important to the development of Survivor, feel a lot more organic than they did in 41. I think a lot of casuals when watching 41 are like, oh, this is too PC, and Jeff is just trying to just be this PC guy. And I feel like it really felt more organic. It felt important, the storyline when they brought it up. And I think that's something that maybe appealed to the casual masses more than what we got in 41 with, I think we should eliminate the come on in guys.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that final 9 in a little bit. Schmuck, you can go ahead.
Yeah, but to that point, yeah, Jeff spoon feeding us. Oh yeah, we don't want to say guys anymore. It's like, yeah, we're not dumb, Jeff. Just stop saying it. It's not something that you really need to stop down on. But 41 definitely felt like Survivor was patting itself on the back. Like, look, we got people of color now. We got, oh yeah, if you're non-binary, you're safe here now. It's like, yes, we understand, but let your actions kind of dictate that, right? And we saw the cast really dictating the direction of some of those social changes in this season a lot more than Jeff just beating us over the head with, look at all the cool stuff we're doing now for everybody else. We're so inclusive. It's like, I don't really need that. And so like, although I appreciate the inclusivity. I'm with the casuals on that one. Like, I don't need you to explain to me every time you do something that makes the game more fair for everybody. Just make the game more fair.
And I said this yesterday, it comes off as fake when Jeff brings up a lot of that stuff last season. With we can focus on the come on in guys, but even just going back to 39, when the round that Jack goes home, so the one right before the merge, where shit hits the fan, Jeff is sitting there saying, "Oh man, like I know that in my past, I've said things about women that I'm not proud of, but like I've grown as a person, and Survivor has grown as a person or as an entity." And in 41, it felt like more of the same. And I guess we have the Sarah Lucina thing in 40, but everyone knows my opinion on that. In 41, it felt pandering, and in 42, we have these moments that mean a lot more. And we just had that final 7 tribal yesterday for 41, where race is brought up, and I've always looked at that moment as like a moment that's always stood out to me. When it happens again this season, we're going to touch on it later. I was looking forward to it all day because I remember how I felt in that moment, and especially being with the Survivor Diversity campaign, just like seeing that come to a head in a moment where Drea is basically saying, "Hey, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going right back to the actual game." But for right now, it's personal. It has to be personal, and it's because once again, where we are at in society in that moment in the summer of 2021, she felt obligated to do it, and I understood. We're going to talk about that later. Let's start talking about some of this cast, some of these people on this cast, because, like I said, this cast is amazing, top to bottom. Even pre-mergers that we get this season, pre-merge tribals that we get this season, specifically the Jenny boot. When the cast was first released, both of y'all can kind of go with this. Were there any people that you were really looking forward to, like, oh, I can't wait to see what this person does? Who are your winner picks? All of that.
Julia, you can start.
Yeah, I remember reading all of the bios, and of course, when I go to watch a season of Survivor, I want to root for a strong woman to win the game. And I don't want to sound like, oh, I thought Marianne was going to win. She was definitely up there for me. There's just something about the smile, but I was very excited to watch Drea play the game. I think just reading her bio, looking at her backstory, she had the capabilities to excel in all 3 aspects of the game, which she did up until the point she went home. And she was someone I was rooting for heavily going into the season, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Marianne guy. I knew I was right. I knew I was right. Like, I had in my soul. Looking at her, I didn't think like she screamed Survivor winner, but I just had to root for her. So much energy, so much happiness just exuding from her. Like, I hope that's the same kind of energy people get off of me as the energy I got from Marianne. But then to watch her play the game, I mean, it was everything you could want for me. Everything I could want in a Survivor player. A character, a strategist, like all that. So from jump, Marianne, but I mean, to your point, Andrew, Jenny Kim. I mean, I really thought that we was going to see Jenny cook, especially after the first episode. I think she does it's been a long time since I watched this season. I think she does the triangle puzzle, right? And she's looking at everybody saying, y'all are all idiots. Come on, man. There's got to be more. How did you get to 6 triangles? There's obviously 30-something triangles on here. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, yes, we're going to get it. We were robbed. Jenny Kim was robbed. But they were definitely 2 of my standouts from jump.
For me, Chanel was my winner pick. And obviously, yes, much like Julia, whenever I see a cast, it's like, okay, I'm going to pick all the black ones, and then I'm going to actually like pick someone. But Chanel was my actual winner pick. Lydia, I just thought she was cute, so I was like, all right, cool, like we'll go with that. And outside of that, I don't think any of the men this season like stood out to me pre-season, but a lot of the women did. Because I had watched the sequester game that Tori had played in, I was obviously, I kind of clocked in on that, and because I played Survivor New York with someone who had played sequester with Tori, they were like, yeah, Tori's a great player, she's a great person, blah blah blah. I was not rooting for Tori this season because I was a Roxroy guy the first time. The second time today, and we'll start with Tori. The second, this is the third time I've watched the season. Tori now falls into the category of an Abby Maria or an Angelina, where the first time I watched them play, it's like I think that they annoy the shit out of me. But then I got it every other time I watched their seasons. And Tori was the same way today. It's like, I think I get Tori. Like she is a villain this season, and her facial expressions are amazing. And her weird rivalry with Roxroy is it very much it doesn't carry the pre-merge, but it is a very fun aspect of the pre-merge. What were y'all's thoughts on Tori versus Roxroy, and what did y'all think of Tori and Roxroy, the players as a whole?
Where did the rift start? Did it start when who voted for who? Because obviously one of them voted for the other one, and they never were able to let it go.
Roxroy voted for Tori at the not the Jenny vote. Maybe the Zach vote. No,
that's early.
Roxroy started it. Roxroy started it.
Roxroy started the beef, and Tori never lets it go. And I think the real issue is that I think at that point, Tori is more in a power position. She starts to kind of move into she goes from that minority position to where she starts to get invited into a lot more strategic conversations. And we know Roxroy isn't having those conversations. So then Tori starts to try to dictate to Roxroy, okay, here are the moves we're making. And Roxroy's like, no, that's not how this works. I don't even really want to work with you like that. And so I think they're never able to get on the same page, because once you vote for me, it's going to be really hard for me to let that go. Also, Tori was almost always at the bottom of whatever alliances she was at. So I think Roxroy had done a really good job of just being a number for the bigger alliances whenever it came up. And Tori was trying to work her way into that. And by doing that, she would have to get somebody like Roxroy out of the way. And he's just so rigid. He's not willing to play a very fluid game. Roxroy has his idea of what he's going to do. They had to literally pull him to the side and be like, Roxroy, you're going to lose. That's why you were left out on the vote, because you won't listen to anybody. He's like, oh damn, I guess I'll let y'all social game for me. Hell, So
I'll ride on you guys' social game coattails. It's like, all right, man, sure.
He literally says, I don't know what I'm doing here, so let me ride on your coattails. And for somebody like Tori, I bet that was very frustrating. So yeah, I think the two of them, that rivalry was fun. But yeah, Tori, I guess she's a bit of a villain to me. She really doesn't do anything extremely villainous, but she's pretty straightforward with the way she talks about the game. She doesn't really mince words. And then when they wanted her out the most, I think she won 2 immunities in a row. Mm-hmm. So, that becomes a very rootable person when you step away from the emotion of the season.
Julia?
I'm a fan of old school Survivor. Anyone can tell that based on the seasons I decided to do for your 46 countdown. But the fact that we got someone like Roxroy on Survivor 42 in this great year 2021 was crazy to me. I know if I was Tori and I'm out there and I'm living my dream, I'm working my ass off trying to strategize, socialize, doing everything, keeping the game, and someone's like, all right, I guess I'll just do whatever then. I don't know. I'm gonna just be here. I know I'd be pissed off too. I get it, girl. Tori, I know some people feel Jenny Kim is their their what if. Tori is my what if. I think a different situation, different tribe, where she wasn't perpetually fighting from the bottom. I think she could have been gold. What we got from her, like you said, kind of your Abby Maria, your Angelina, where I think a different situation, just pure entertainment we could have gotten from her. And
I loved her this time around.
Yeah,
she was great. She was great. I was more team Tori this time than I was team Roxroy.
And I know that hurts to say for you.
It does, because my boy Roxroy, once again, I'm an old school Survivor fan myself, and watching Roxroy play that time, it was just like he's just this fish out of water type player. And Jeff makes mention of it during Final Tribal, where he says, Roxroy, I have never met someone that was so excited about the physical aspect of the game than you. And Roxroy, he wears it, as a badge of honor. Roxroy, he adds to this season because, yes, he's not social or strategic by any stretch of the imagination, but that helps because we have those bases covered. We don't need everyone to be either social strategic. We need characters that are going to just be Roxroy. I mean, we need a Roxroy. And so, we have that dynamic. We have whatever's going on with not the Blue Tribe. The tribe, it's oh gosh. High and that
the Green
crew.
Tribe. That's Jenny.
Green Tribe. Yeah. And we have Daniel who fucks up his shoulder very early in the first challenge. And there's this whole storyline of none of these people trust each other at all. Every single tribal that they go to, it's just like a bunch of mess. And we get this Jenny vote out. For me, it was, I don't want to, is this going to be hyperbole? I don't think so. Outside of that tribal council that we're going to get to, that final 9 tribal council, it is my favorite tribal council of the season. The one that Jenny goes home, not because of the result, but because everything that goes into it, with Chanel basically getting thrown under the bus first and trying to play it off as if like I don't have a vote. Why are y'all asking me? I don't know. Daniel's just like Chanel said this. Chanel said why are you putting this on me? I have nothing to do with it. Mike Turner not wanting to flip on Jenny. High not actually flipping on Lydia. For y'all, it could be one of those 2 tribals. It could be anything else. Is there a couple of tribals this season that stand out to you as like, I might never watch 42 again, but that is what it's all about in this season?
Well, I don't want to deviate too far from the tribal council you're talking about, but Chanel, I was aghast at what was happening. I said, what are you doing? I remember this vividly. She loses her vote because she tells Omer, hey, I need my vote. I'm definitely not going to risk my vote. No matter what happens, I got to have this vote because this is a very important part. Like, it's 2-2-2. I need my vote. I'm not going to use. So then she goes and risks the vote. I was like, what are you doing? Why did you do that? So then she gets there. She doesn't tell anybody that she lost the vote. No, she's going to let them go in and see what happens. Then she gets there. Everything's tied up. And she's looking around like, oh, what's going on? I don't understand. And so when Daniel starts looking for help, she's like, I don't know. I didn't vote. I didn't have no vote. What are you talking about? Why didn't you tell these people beforehand? What is going on? That tribal council there, it's like I said, I was a big Jenny Kim fan. There's one other person in the season that I was really big fan of from the beginning. We haven't talked about yet, but Jenny had stood out for me. And I thought there's no way Jenny's going home in this spot because why would this happen? But I think Mike had lost his vote by there. Chanel had lost her vote and didn't tell anybody. So they're really down 2 votes from jump. And then there's this weird split where they're trying to vote out Jenny. They're trying to vote out Lydia. They got to go to Rox. And Daniel just folds like a t-shirt. I'm talking about just like, instantly just, all right, I don't want to go to Rox. What do we got to do to keep that from happening? And High's just like, okay, let's not go to Rox. Let's get out Jenny. And he just takes the L. And it's so embarrassing. I'm sorry. Like, that was just like, man, just stand up. Have a backbone for the love of God. And so Jenny goes home, and now Daniel comes back, and they don't trust Daniel no more. They don't trust Chanel no more. And Mike, who doesn't have a vote, who was on the wrong side of this whole thing, is now in a power position. It's insane.
Everyone's roasted me about picking Chanel, but I was biased because she came from me and Julia's side of the community, the org side of the community, and she was a black woman. So like both of those combined, it's like, all right, yeah, I got to go this route. But yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say Chanel was like a game changer because she did have a lot of flubs.
She changed the game. She changed the game. It wasn't for the better, but there were definitely moments. If the game could have gone one way and Chanel made sure it did not several times, it didn't happen just once, So she was very entertaining to watch, I will say. But that tribal council stands out to me because I do not know what she was doing. I was so confused.
Julia, once again, this going based off of the question, you can keep on talking about this one. Were there any tribals to you outside of those 2 that stood out to you as like, this is my favorite tribal of the season, or was it that final 9 and the Jenny Kim vote out?
Yeah, I think besides that, I would have to go with the Omer boot, just because
yes.
I
Yeah, okay.
love people's reaction. Like, it was very, the vibes to me were like when Cody got voted out and like the big swelling music when he ended up like shaking Jesse's hand. It was kind of the same thing of like when people like realize they got and you have that big moment for like this character you've been rooting for the whole time, and like the person getting voted out was like so positive about it, and that's how I felt. But beside that, it really is that final 9 tribal for me. I watched Survivor like with my mother growing up. It's what really got me into the show, is just watching every night with my mom when it was on. And I remember watching 39 with her. I remember watching 41. We talked about early, like with Jamal and 39, when we had all the talks in 41 where she was like, this just doesn't like it, why are we talking about this in Survivor? And I'm like, Mom, this is like, we should be talking about this in Survivor because it's supposed to be about the real world. And that tribal in 42 was the first time I remember her looking at me and going like, I get it. I get what you've been saying for these years when we're watching this show. Like, I understand why there is a place for this in this television show, and why like this is a microcosm of life. And I think beyond the boot, because at the end of the day, the Tory boot wasn't anything too mind-blowing, but I think what it did and like the conversations it sparked moving forward is just, it was really great, and something that I definitely will remember for many, many seasons to come.
And I'm glad you brought up the Omer vote out. We're going to touch on that. If we want to just go to this final 9 one right now, because we have danced around it for a while. For me, obviously, I loved it. You know, everyone knows how I felt about the 41 final 7 with Deshaun having that conversation, and how I felt Shan at Final Tribal. It kind of annoyed me the way that she tried to frame it as if Deshaun was trying to utilize that as a way of pushing himself forward in the game. Here, you know, Drea straight up says, this is basically just, it's as close to personal as possible, but I'm going to go straight back into strategy after we do this. And the way I'm going to do that is me and Marion is going to play her idol, I'm going to play my idol, and we'll just go from there. What annoyed me, and this is once again going to the tangent that I went on last night, the internet, social media has been around for most of Survivor's history. And for me, until 41, people have never been as vocal about a lot of the stuff that happens on the show until then. Because even 39, people weren't they weren't and coming out in droves for it. 41, I remember vividly looking at doom scrolling, watching people get pissed off at what happened at Final 7, and I remember vividly this tribal people being pissed off that this was a thing that they kept in the show. This is my I hate Russell Hantz moment of the episode, because I do. I remember he posted a video because Drea was a part of the vote to vote out Chanel. And he's like, oh, I can't believe that she would have this conversation when she's responsible for Chanel being on the jury. And it's like, that just shows how tone deaf and how much of a piece of shit you are as a person, because that's not what she's talking. And I've said this enough on here. I don't care. I think that we needed that. And it didn't feel like it dragged. And this is actually the episode where I turned on Jonathan 100%, just because he got so defensive about it. And he apologized later, but it was like, okay, I've been looking for a reason to not like you, and I think that's it. Joel, do you think that we post 42, because right now we're still dealing with George Floyd, Black Lives Matter. We're dealing with a lot of stuff in that moment and that season. Do you feel like this is a conversation that we still need to have on the show, or at least be shown on the show past that, or do you think that should be the end? And that's I don't think so. I just want to get your opinion on it.
I mean, I don't really have an issue. Like, let's say this conversation didn't happen in 42, right? Let's say it didn't happen. Drea comes in, she does what she ends up doing. She probably goes home here, and we don't have the conversation. We don't stop down on it, and whatever happens, happens. And now here we are going on 40 several, and we have a similar pattern. If you notice, whenever these tribes split in half, the black folks are going home at this tribal council every time, unless somebody plays an idol, it's the black people. So had this happen again in 47, and somebody finally said for the last 5 seasons, for the last 5 seasons, with the exception of one, all the two black people are going at the split tribal council, and I don't want that to happen in 47. I don't think that's anything you can hold against somebody. You're like, I would like to see more representation past this one vote. Every time we're losing people, I could go down the list and just name them. And if I was playing Survivor, I'd be very weary of this vote, because I'm trying to figure out, causation does not necessarily mean like correlation, right? They're not necessarily the same thing, but it doesn't matter that you, like, if you don't want to see the same pattern perpetuated over and over again, as Drea will say. So yeah, I think there's room for the conversation. It can happen, but it doesn't need to be something that we have to revisit every time it happens. I think that Drea had the right read to do that. And I was more impressed with Marianne, because Marianne was not in danger of going home at all. Drea was on the way out the door. She was about to play that idol, and then Tori was probably going to go. But then Marianne says, let me go ahead and play my idol. Not because I need to, but because I know that the people sitting at home are already typing their think pieces to say she only got her idol because, or she only got through this round because. And so she's like, no, I watched the idol, we lose it, and now nobody can say Marianne was able to make it through the game with an idol because of race. And so that is always more impressive to me. And that's the moment that I knew, ride or die for Marianne. She can do no wrong. I'm sorry if she doesn't win the game. It's a travesty, because around that time, I think she was second in line in my winner rankings, behind one other person. But at that moment, I've been Team Marianne ever since, and I'll never switch up.
And I do agree, obviously. I wasn't very big on in the online game of Survivor before COVID. I just thought it was just me, and I didn't pay attention to what anyone else would tweet about the show. Post-COVID, obviously, I started to latch on to basically anyone that tweeted about Survivor, because, hey, I love people that love shit that I like. Like you said, and like Drea said, and like Marianne said, we already know that this is going to be the narrative to some folks. Oh, it's woke Viber. But at a certain point, and one of them brought up Omer being the first person to practice Islam that made it to the merge, and how he might have this thing that he wants to do this. Erica brings it up in 41. I felt like shit for voting Liana out because I want a woman to win. Like, there are these things that happen in these games that some people just feel uncomfortable thinking about, feel uncomfortable talking about, get defensive about, like Jonathan. And I do feel like people do need to continue to bring it up, but they also need to continue to show it to us, because I'm not going to sit here and think that they have never brought it up again at every tribal since 42. Come on. But I do think they need to show it to us. Who cares if it makes people uncomfortable? We just got last season, people watch that more than they watch most things. So people are going to continue. Everyone that said, oh yeah, I'm not watching Survivor anymore because it's different or whatever. Clearly, that's not true. It's the same people that said they were going to stop watching the NFL because Kaepernick got on a knee, and they kept on watching that. So Tori does go home that round. She still tries. She still tries to play her shot in the dark, and I don't think that people would have been upset at that point if. Well, I guess Lindsay would have been the only person eligible to go home there. Julia. Do you feel like if that hadn't happened, if Roxroy somehow survives that first 5, that, we can assume that, something different would have happened with the next 5, but do you feel like Marianne and Drea specifically were swimming up Schitt's Creek without a paddle from there? Or do you feel like they could have still navigated the way that they did?
Well, Coach, let me tweak your question for Julia a little bit. What if the tribal councils were switched around? You know, we only get the Roxroy reaction because he goes home first. Because they had a double tribal council that day. Roxroy goes and they see him sit up on the jury. What if that's not the case? What if they go first? Then we have to see whatever plays out. Does Roxroy have that same reaction? Like, you know, a lot of things in Survivor are tweaked by just these very little small differences. I know, Drew, you talked about heroes versus villains, and I've always maintained that if they don't if they don't get the villains to go watch the heroes tribal counts, like if that's the other way around, Russell Hantz, they don't look at him as somebody who's in the minority. You know what I'm saying? They could have easily saw that work out, but they didn't. They were in the opposite order. So, Julia, if this is played differently, do you see there being any runway for Drea and Marianne moving forward, or are they screwed after like a Roxroy?
Is that a loaded question? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'm bad. I'll be rambling. My bad, y'all.
No. Because I want to answer that one.
I feel like there is still runway moving forward. I mean, they were still able to, Marianne, at least, to really like move forward from that situation. I don't think Roxroy would have had the same reaction at all. Like we saw from Roxroy throughout the game, like he was there to play, but he was there to build shelter. He was there to build fire. He was there to play Survivor in 2003 with Ruber, and that's what he wanted to do. That's what he came there to do. Where it's Drea and Marianne not only have the fact that they're Black, and I've seen 2 Black people go out, but the fact that they are women as well and have been treated with so much oppression in their lives because of these things. So obviously had that very visceral reaction to seeing this. And Roxroy wouldn't have given us that. And I'm very glad it was in the order it did, because it was a really important conversation that needed to be had, and something that I think Survivor players moving forward have definitely taken notice of, I think, and hopefully check their implicit biases a little bit. But I think if it had been reversed, if things had still played out where Drea plays her idol, Tori still goes home, and then Roxroy goes home in the second one like normal, I think we don't really get that much change. I think Marianne still moves forward, and I think Drea is still seen as the giant threat she is, rightfully so, and gets taken out soon after. But I think the only thing that changes with that is we don't get this really powerful moment that I think is really great. Yeah.
I want to touch on this. Can we talk about Jonathan calling Drea aggressive? I want to hear you guys' thoughts. Yeah, I mean, this ain't Philip Shepard and Redemption Island saying that, you know, going off about the crazy comment. Because in that situation, it's like, okay, just based off how it's being portrayed, you are kind of crazy. Like, that's just what it is. Here, I don't get, and this is not me being biased towards the situation, I don't feel like Drea is being aggressive. She's very clearly in shock at what has happened. Jeff keeps asking her questions, and I think it's because Jeff's not picking up on the cues of, like, Drea is upset about things outside of what's going on. Drea's in shock, and when she finally brings up the topic, she does it in a very mild-mannered type of way. You know, Tori makes a comment, and I don't think that she meant anything by it. And Drea says, "Of course, you wouldn't understand because of this." But even then, I feel like Drea was just saying how she felt in the moment. So when Jonathan says, "Yeah, it's aggressive," it's like, yeah, that's exactly the type of shit that Drea is talking about, because she is just making a point. She's just making a point that you have now turned into, oh, she's angry Black woman. Yes, he doesn't say that, but like that's what we hear. Does anyone have any deferring ideas to that, or
when Jonathan says it, like, you could hear the collective groan around America from people who are trying to have these conversations, right? We're like, oh, here we go again, more of this, because this is exactly what she's trying to beat. These stereotypes and the way that she's perceived for trying to stand up for herself in this moment and say, you know what, I'm gonna do something outside the game that has nothing to do with the rest of you. Honestly, this is a personal feeling that I'm having, and I I feel this way and I'm going to react to it, and y'all can do whatever y'all want with that information, but I will not be involved in this. And Jonathan's response is, you calling us racist? So you calling us racist, and then he's like, oh, you're being very aggressive when she starts to fight back against that. But I think what it is that when you're so used to being centered in conversations like Jonathan probably is, you're not used to hearing when people make comments about the way they're feeling in a moment. You feel like that they're saying that you are making them feel that way. And she was not saying the tribe is racist. They're voting out all the black people. That's what Russell Hand's stupid ass got on the internet and tried to do. Like, you voted out Chanel. Are you racist too? But what she was saying is, this is how I feel in the moment, thanks to all this social context that I have. And Jonathan not having any of that context and being who he is, all he heard was, you're making this, you're making me feel this way. You're telling me I'm racist or whatever. And so he fought back against that. By the end of the conversation, he does say, oh, I thought y'all were trying to say that we were racist against you, which again, he's still missing the point, but you can see where the disconnect is, right? He's so used to being the center of whatever's going on that when she's now centering her blackness, he does not understand that the way she's feeling does not mean that it's based off of anything that he specifically has done on purpose. It could be implicit. It could be just what the situation calls for just in that moment. He didn't vote out Roxroy. She's not saying I'm going next because they voted out Roxroy, thus all y'all gonna gang up on me. She would have been right. She was about to get voted out, it seems, but it had nothing to do with what was going on as far as Roxroy and Chanel. It was the optics. She was like, I don't want to be the third person. I don't want to perpetuate this pattern. And he just isn't used to hearing it. Now, the word aggressive is coded. That is coded language, and it is used to describe black people, specifically black women, when they speak up for themselves. But I think there's a lot of coded language like that, often used in Survivor all the time. That is just we always have to call it out when it happens. Calling black people aggressive, calling Asian women sneaky, those kind of things. Is like you've heard those things said before, so you start to repeat them. But that is part of the problem. So it was such a loaded tribal council that actually I don't really care for it that much. I honestly get really annoyed hearing them talk about it because I'm just like, damn, I was rooting for Marianne so much. I was like, yeah, get Drea ass out right now. What are we doing? Now she got to waste her idol. I'm thinking this is taking Marianne away from the game she was about to make in the game. So this is not my second favorite tribal council or my first. I'm sorry.
No. We all have differing opinions. Yeah, Julia, go ahead.
I think Chappelle said it perfectly. I'm not the biggest Jonathan fan in the entire world. I'll admit that. Like Chappelle said, this isn't your first or second favorite tribal. He's not my first, second, third, fourth, fifth favorite player of the season. But I don't think he had bad intentions in that. He just cannot, as a white cis het man who has constantly had everything just, I don't want to say handed to him, but like has never faced any sort of oppression or difficulties in his life for how he outwardly looks and appears and carries himself. He does not understand. Like, we take it all the way back to Amazon. It's like, we all know Rob Sesternino in this community. Like, you watch that episode in the pre-merge when they vote out Dan Liu, and Dan Liu says, it's hard being the only person of color on this tribe where everyone has something so important, internal, in common, except me. And Rob is a great guy. Like, he's been, like, we know that. And him going, hey, like, I'm not racist. We're not voting out Dan because he's Asian. We're voting out Dan because he doesn't get along with us. Because this, that, and the other. It's not because there's any sort of, like, hatred or anything. It's just, you don't get it. I don't get it. And I never will get it. And neither will Jonathan. But it's something that you can just try to empathize with and understand. And that's just something he is not connected with yet and was very evident when you're watching that tribal council.
Julia, you say that you would never get it, but I have a feeling that, like, that, even as a woman, you do have to deal with those things as well. Even in this season, we'll see that Jonathan and Lindsay are working very close together, and there's parts where she's like, I don't like the way he's talking to me. But as a man, sometimes we be like, just saying things, and you don't realize sometimes that you are centering yourself is a very important thing. Do you have that experience as well?
Yeah, just even playing like the online games of I started very young, being like a young woman, or like I'm in STEM, being a woman in STEM, things like that, of just having those difficulties there. But just specifically like the topic of of race is something that like Jonathan will never understand, because it's something that he will never ever have to deal with in his life. So no matter how well intentioned he was being and how much he was trying to, like, even if he was trying to positively contribute to the conversation, him being like, well, I'm not racist. He's completely missing the point. And unless he tries to educate himself in that way, he will never get that point. And it's sad. It's unfortunate. But
yeah, so
I want to just segue to the Jonathan character this season, because this is the character that the Facebook moms adopted for this season after they started their GoFundMe for Xander last season because he was some robbed god, even though he was third place. We get Jonathan this season. This time around, I was looking for the moment that I turned on him, because I actually couldn't remember, because like for a large part of it, it's like, yeah, like I don't like physical people on the show because I don't care about that aspect of the show, but like he seems like a wholesome enough guy. Yeah, he was abused as a kid, but like whatever, he's all good. And then when that tribal happens, like, okay, that's it. And when he starts being very passive aggressive with Lindsay, when he starts being very passive aggressive with Drea, his whole one-sided beef with Marianne, it becomes very grating. And as I watched it, I'm just like, okay, and we're going to get to this at the end of the episode when I ask, who do you guys think is going to come back for 50? I don't think Jonathan wouldn't be on my list. Jonathan's definitely on CBS's list of people that were Jonathan would. I feel like there are a few people that are locks, and I feel like Jonathan's probably one of them because they loved him. They loved him so much, to the point where Jeff points out, "Oh yeah, you, Mr. Jeff," and it's like, yeah, okay, that's becoming very annoying because Jeff likes it. Because Jeff likes Jonathan calling him Mr. Jeff, I'm done with this guy. Jonathan as a game player, Jonathan as the physical beast that he is, and he is that. What were y'all's thoughts on him? And we can remove the Tory boot episode just because we've talked enough about it. Were y'all fans of Jonathan this season?
I enjoyed Jonathan at the beginning. I think what was said about Roxroy of we had the bases covered of these hyper strategic, hyper fans of the show, social players. So it was nice to kind of sometimes see this person on our television screens who kind of like took us back to quote unquote the Survivor we know and love of like the early days of someone who's like really caring about the shelter. So it reminded me of, you know, like your prime Ozzy and things that way when he was trying to hold together his struggling tribe, and I enjoyed that. But as you got to a more Jonathan actually having to play the game, and I think showing more of his character and how he operates in a position of power and speaks to people, that's when the allure of Jonathan went away. When they could portray him only in this positive light where he's just crushing these pre-merge challenges and reminds us of those Malcolms and Aussies that we loved watching before. It was fun. It was great and I enjoyed it. But I think once we got actual Jonathan, that's when I stopped liking him a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't agree that Jonathan is a lock for 50. I think that Jonathan's come a dime a dozen. I think that there's a lot of every season there's a physical player. There's always at least one who, you know, we got to get him off at the merge at some point, you know, in order to, yeah, if we don't get him at the merge, he's going to win them all. You know, we see that all the time. Hunter was one, like they come and they go. And so my fingers are crossed, right, that we get one of those in the next couple seasons. Because I don't think Hunter's going to be the one to put Jonathan out. I think right now he's probably at the top of that list because he was just so physical. I think that, you know, not being Jonathan fans, we will probably undersell how physical this man is. They had to change challenges because everybody else couldn't do them. And Jonathan was the only one that they tried to drown half that tribe.
Yeah.
They tried to drown all three tribes, and Jonathan single-handedly lifted them through the ocean. You know what I'm saying? he was doing things that I'd never seen on Survivor anymore, just based off of his sheer will and strength and the fact that he'd been weight training since he was 3 years old. So it'd be really hard to find another specific to Jonathan. But everything else outside of his physical game, you can find it anywhere. Jonathan was not strategic. Every time he came up with a strategy, there was always somebody there to poke a hole in and say, no, Jonathan, that's not the right move. Very early on, I think he's like, oh yeah, we got to target this person. And Lindsay's trying to tell him, like, no, if you target Marianne and she plays her idol, then, this is going to happen. We'll lose Drea and Marianne. Like, what are you doing? And those things just don't click for him. The Orange Tribe loses one of their first challenges. Why? Because Jonathan is the caller and he's on the puzzle. Jonathan loses the damn what is it, final 4 or final 5? I think it's final 5, right? He's beating Lindsay. She has an advantage. She goes into the puzzle. He's in front of her. The man comes in third on the puzzle. Like, he has his weaknesses. Social game is probably a weakness. His strategic game is a weakness. He's not good at puzzles, so he's just one note. And I think that's why, in my mind, if Survivor really wanted to replace Jonathan, they could. Now, do they want to is the question. And right now, I think he might be top of the list.
And I feel like there's a history of Survivor bringing back challenge people that don't have the best social or strategic games. Specifically, Ozzy and Joe. I've never everyone knows that I'm not the biggest Ozzy person, just because of the seasons that he plays on. He does kind of come off as arrogant. But I do appreciate. I think that South Pacific is probably the best version of Ozzy. Joe is shown time and time again to have zero social game, to the point where in Edge of Extinction, he's so confident that they're going to stay strong that he says during Tribal, I didn't scramble. It's like, oh, okay. And guess who goes home? Joe does. So I do feel like, I hope that there is a larger than life character that we get in 47, 48, or 49, because if we don't, it's going to be Jonathan, because I don't feel like they prefer Hunter over him. And like you mentioned that, I don't feel like they prefer Hunter over him. So Jonathan, and they put it in the edit when he gets voted out or when he loses fire making. I'm going to say yes if they ever invite me back again. It's like, yeah, they kept that there because they're going to bring it back. And I know everyone likes to say, oh, yeah, these strategic threats are going to get targeted first. If a Dom comes back or Shannon or Ricard or whoever, I think Jonathan just goes first because no one's going to want to deal with that. Let's get rid of him now.
No, he ain't going nowhere. You have to look at the amount of energy that I don't think they lose a team challenge that has him doing anything physical. Like I said, the one team challenge they lost was because he was on the puzzle. Like, if you get that kind of dominance on your tribe, it's very hard to vote that out. Just because, damn, we might actually lose if we lose him. And nobody wants to go to tribal council, even as much as they tell you that they don't mind, they hate it. And so I do think that if he's there, he'll stick around. But I'm just saving hope that maybe they find a Jonathan replacement, like a Jonathan 2.0 coming up soon.
I agree, which is the awful part, is it's going to be an iconic season. It's going to be a stacked cast. And at this point, Jonathan's going to be on it. Unless something crazy happens, we have to assume. What you said is they're going to be shitting their pants that if they get rid of him, they will keep losing. And then, like any all-star season, they're going to get to the merge, and who's going to be looking at Jonathan because he doesn't have a social game, because he doesn't have a strategic game. And we're going to see the exact same thing we saw in 42, where he just goes on because A, he's either winning a challenge, or B, why would you waste a vote on Jonathan? And I don't want him on my screen for that long. I don't
need Jonathan back. Some of these other characters, and like I keep saying, this cast is so loaded with people that everyone can attach themselves to. And I want to talk about Omer for a second, because I was at the Know-It-Alls Live in New York City, the round that High goes home. And that was the episode that Omer really establishes himself as the guy on the season. And for me, the funniest part of that, watching it in the situation that I watched it in, one is everyone laughing at Omer's facial expressions when he would do things and stare towards the camera, Jim Halpert style. The other is when Jonathan loses immunity to Lindsay, that place blows up, and it's like, yes, okay, cool. I'm among my own because we all hate this guy. Omer is a character that, so far, through to 46, him and Jesse for me are the ones, are a couple of the other people that I'm like, okay, if they wanted to bring people back from this specific archetype of like the strategic person that is doing all the stuff and is laying kind of below the radar, I think that Omer falls in that category. And I loved him this season. I think one of the more wholesome moments is more of a Mike Turner moment, but Mike actually like watching and asking him questions about his prayer, and it didn't come off as pandering or fake or whatever. It just felt like Mike taking a genuine interest in someone. What were y'all's thoughts on Omer the character, Omer the game player?
Yeah, it was like you said, that was one of those like real organic moments where it didn't feel pandering. It didn't feel like it was something they were showing to us to like check off their diversity box. Like it felt real. And I feel like a lot of those things that I really connected with this season, a lot of them seem to come with Omer. I just think he was such a great character. He was such a light. And it was wonderful like seeing this first like only practicing Muslim person for the first time making it to the merge and being this huge player to the point that him getting voted out was essentially not what won Marianne the game. Was like her big selling point was getting him out. I think if you ask me like who is a lock if they're bringing someone back for 42, I'm going to say it's Marianne, and then I'm going to say it's Omer, just because of what he brought to the season. I think that other people in his archetype don't bring in the way that he's going to be sneaky, he's going to do his thing, he's going to make these moves, but he also just brings this wonderful positivity to the game that I just absolutely love and resonate with so much.
Yeah. So I came in rooting for Marianne, but very quickly I was like, okay, Omer in the preseason, his interviews were perfect. I was like, I find nothing wrong with this man. We had to do our draft on RHAP, and it was like the top of my list. It was Omer and Marianne, and I was like, and Shannon got Omer first, and I was like, damn it, okay, cool. I'm gonna get Marianne because it was like 1A and 1B to me, and I was very proud of the way he played this game. Like Julia said, it was so pure. It was like he was just out there living his dream. He was being himself. And Omer, he cooked. He really did. Like with the moments that he got to do, like the strategic maneuvering, it was so good. When he takes out Lydia with no vote, I was done. I was just like, oh God, who is this guy? Like, how did you manage to do that? He gets high to flip on somebody that High had been working with the entire game that he went to rocks for, and he does this without even having a vote. They should have just voted Omer out. It's like, like he's the one like pulling the strings here. Then later on, I think for the next 2 or 3 episodes after that, he's got his foot on the gas. I mean, he's left and right just maneuvering. And if it wasn't for somebody like Marianne, he would have got to the end and just demolished everybody. My only fear with Omer is that now we've seen it. I think they didn't know. I thought he was unassuming at the time. I think that they really like enjoy Omer. He's kind of goofy. He's kind of fun. He wasn't the biggest personality on that tribe because Marianne was there, of course. But I think now that you've seen it up close, how do you let Omer get anywhere near the money? You know what I'm saying? Like at some point, you're like, there's no way I'm letting this guy slide through under the radar like he did the first time.
I think the one thing that he has going for him with that is he still has people in front of him. Like there's so many locks.
He's Dom. He's Dom who has sat at the end and has received enough votes sitting in front of him. Yeah.
There's so many locks that I don't want to say people are just going to forget how good he is. But like you're going to have Jesse who like was one fire making challenge away from possibly winning the game unanimously and one of like the best wins we've ever seen. We're gonna have people from pre new era like Dominic who literally tied in the first tie ever. We're gonna have these crazy people. We're gonna have Christian Hubicki who studies slide puzzles in his free time. All this shit where I think of any of these people in his archetype of these hyper strategic, like sly, sneaky players. I put my money on anyone to be able to sneak by. I think it would be Omer. And I hope and pray he's on 50 because he's someone I have so much hope in to do well.
Yeah, the most impressive thing that I saw Omer do in this game, aside from that Lydia vote is so good. But when he just determines, like out of the blue, like, yeah, I think I can flip Mike on high real quick, and he just does it. He does it. It works. And then that move is one of the things that really tanks Mike's game, because Mike goes to the end. He goes to the final tribal council preaching integrity and saying, I only lied to Roxroy. What are you talking about? I said, no, you lied to me. He's like, no, you came after me first. And High goes, no, Omer made it up. And Mike's just, his whole vision of his game is just incorrect at that point, you know, because he thought I had full control. I was loyal to the people I was loyal to until they gave me a reason. I didn't give him any reason. He didn't. Omer tricked him and he fell for it. And Mike went down swinging under the notion that, yeah, I betrayed High because he was coming for me first. And that just wasn't the case. That move just reverberates throughout the game so much longer than it seems.
Yeah, and Mike Turner is someone that I felt so horrible for at Final Tribal, only because you can see on his face the moment that he realizes I done goofed. Like I thought I was doing this, and these people are not seeing it that way at all. And he doesn't get defensive of it. Like he gets into an argument at first, and then everyone's just reacting like, "No, Mike, this is not what you were actually doing. You were actually turning on a lot of people, and people did trust you because you kept saying this whole integrity thing." And I did feel for him because he does seem like a genuinely nice person. I do feel like a lot of these bonds that he was trying to build with these people, a lot of the deals that he was trying to make with people were real. He would get duped. He would, he easily flipped on Roxroy during that vote, easily in the realm of the show, what we're shown. I felt bad for him in that moment, and that was the first time that I felt bad for someone sitting at the reunion that they do. Not like 41, yes, Deshaun is in shock, and I feel for him. Xander's in shock, and I'm all right because I hate his fans. Xander's fine. I hate his fans. Here, I felt for sitting there having to deal with the fact that he's lost, and he is in shock. Romeo, I felt like did a very good job at that final tribal. I think this is newbie cast wise probably the best final tribal performances that we have had since maybe 37, but maybe even earlier back than that, because I do feel like all three of them performed very well. I think that Romeo was able to tell his story coming from the bottom, even though he was pretty much in control pre-merge. He started the merge on the bottom, and he continued to stay on the bottom as it continued. I think Mike Turner, was able to self-reflect on a lot of things that happened in the game, and him taking this criticism and, kind of trying to go with it. But Marianne, we can get to the Marianne of it all now. For me, Marianne, outside of Chris and Vanuatu and Todd and China, has the greatest final tribal performance of all time for a winner. Julia, just go ahead. Shit, you can go ahead.
That's so funny because I was going to equate how I felt about watching Mike to how I felt about watching Twyla in the Vanuatu finale of just, you could see the change and just like the moment they realize like everything they're saying and how they're articulating is just so wrong. And I rooted for like both of them the whole game, and they were both great, and it was just heartbreaking in those like final moments for both of them of like, you just feel the defeat that they both have. in the exact opposite is for Chris and Marianne. They just soared in those final tribals. I just think it was really funny because I was going to make the exact opposite comparison for those two.
Okay.
I think that's an amazing comparison. Oh my god! I mean, I haven't watched this season or been watching it forever, so I was like, man, I would have never thought about that. But you're so right, because Twyla and Mike played equally aggressive games. I don't think Mike was ever like. I think maybe once he didn't know what was going on in the game, like one time. Aside from that, he was driving a lot of the votes. So for him to get to the end and lose, it takes either a flop at Tribal Council or an amazing display from somebody else. And I think that Chris and Marianne both were very much in that situation where they knew what they needed to do to get to the end, and they executed it. And so when they got to the end, there was no question or ambiguity about why they got to the end, right? Twyla had no clue that that Chris was playing her the whole time. So when she got to the end, she didn't expect people to say that. She was like, "Wait, what? Hold on, where'd that come from? Y'all don't like me? But Chris said, And then we saw Mike do the same thing. Like, he gets to the end thinking, "This is how I played the game," and Marianne's like, "Yeah, you did, but here's all the things that I was doing while you were doing that." And everybody respected that more because he missed so many things about his game. Whereas from Marianne, from the time she finds that idol at the merge, she gets left out of like one vote, and then from there she got it. Like, she knows exactly where she stands, and she knows what it takes to get to the end. Her, like I said, getting through that Drea thing, getting out Omer, and then setting herself up to where everybody was going to be sitting next to her at the final three. She knew that, and she played it out to where nobody in the jury could say, well, Marianne didn't know what was going on, because she proved that she could and that she did. And so, yeah, I mean, that's probably the best comparison I've ever heard, honestly. It's so good. And it's so impressive as a final tribal council. Like, I respect that a lot more, because I feel like going into the final tribal council, she's not the front runner. I think Mike is. I just think that he doesn't know that he is, and that he doesn't know what to say to articulate that he should win. So he goes up against a buzzsaw who does, and she just cooks him up.
It's very similar to. I hate comparing Mike to this person because I like Mike. It's very similar to Coach in South Pacific, where he's not self-aware enough to realize, hey, let me just actually say that I was doing all of these things. Like, Coach was doing a lot of manipulative shit in that season. Then he goes and he chooses then to go back to the, oh yeah, I was playing honorably, I play with integrity, and said all of this. I feel like the difference is Mike actually does think that he was doing this. I don't believe for a second that Coach thought he was actually doing that. I feel like he had, because that's who Coach is. With Mike, and that's why I felt so bad for him, because it was, and I felt bad for Twyla and Vanuatu. Julia bringing that up. I felt bad for Twyla and Vanuatu because that is another moment where she sits there and she realizes these people hate me. And it's even different more because the Vanuatu jury is actually bitter. They're not these bitter juries that people like to claim happened in Samoa or Heroes versus Villains or anything like that. The Vanuatu jury is actually pissed off at both of these people, and they make it known very fast. The jury here, and Jeff applauds them for it. Hey, you were asking them tough questions, but you were being very respectful towards all of them. I feel like everyone answered the questions very well. It never felt like they were attacking them. And when Jonathan gets fucking neutered, when he tries to claim a move that Marianne did, she was like, well, actually, it happened like this. In that moment, I think that she was almost always going to win once that final tribal started. But in that moment, it's like, okay, Jonathan might actually vote for her too. Probably not, but Jonathan might actually vote for her too. The point, the fact that she was able to pull out the idol and say, hey, this is it. This is my moment right here. I had this. Nobody knew about it because everyone was sharing everything in this game, and I didn't share this. The fact that I feel like I won't call it BS, but like the fact that she tried to do the whole women younger than 25 thing, where she's like, oh yeah, I saw that any woman that was shown to be strategic that was under 25 got voted out. And then she gets to Tori and she says, yeah, but you were on the bottom and made the merge and then got voted out. I was like, okay, if there is a if there is a bullshit bone in this woman's body in this moment, it's probably that. But it doesn't matter because you get Tori's reaction to it of, oh yeah, you're right, I am under 25, and I was on the bottom, and I was strategic. I still got voted out the merge. I think that I could talk about the Marianne final tribal, for another hour. We won't. But just like I said, her, Todd, Chris, for me, greatest final tribal performance for a winner ever. I sent Chappelle this video last week. I've sent it to Julia today, and everyone that's listening has probably seen it. I broke down crying when she won, and this is going to the personal aspect of it that I brought at the beginning of this. I remember where I was when Vesepia won Marquesas. I was in my mom's hair salon, and when that moment happened, I was probably like 10 or 11 years old, and I remember crying in that moment because I had seen someone that looked like me win the show that I was falling in love with at that point. And then, Earl wins, Jeremy wins, we get Wendell. And of course, I was ecstatic when they all won. But it was just kept in the back of my mind. It's like, okay, yeah, Black women don't do well here. I think the closest that I know Laurel sits at the end and everything, but I think the person that has the best chance are probably Sari and Taj up to this point in history. And so when Marianne gets to the end of the game, right after the Omer boot, it's like, just get rid of Lindsay, and I guarantee this woman will win. And when she does, I was at my students, I had gotten them into Survivor, and I was over at their house, and they got the video of me breaking down. They're like, and they couldn't believe it because I don't cry often. And it was such a moment for me, and it came full circle from Marquesas. And I feel like, and we're going back to the Black thing for a second. I felt like that was such a big moment for people of color in the community, in the larger Survivor community. But for me specifically, being with the Survivor Diversity campaign and seeing something come to fruition 1 or 2 seasons in a row, and we had just seen it on Big Brother, it meant a lot to me. For y'all, I know y'all have different experiences with how the win was for y'all. Julia, we'll start with you. How did you feel when Marianne, were you pulling for her at the end? Did you feel like, oh yeah, maybe I'd be all right with Mike? And I would have been all right with Mike or Romeo, but I feel like I needed that in that moment.
Yeah, I love this season. So much like you always say, Coach, at the end of the day, I wouldn't say, oh, this person was robbed. This person was robbed. You don't like that. But I really wanted Marianne win. I obviously, again, as I said before with Jonathan, I will never understand the emotions and how you felt with the full circle of the Vesepia, but it had been so long since we got a young woman who would win Survivor, and we had never had a young woman like Marianne, who was so open about her emotions and was so open about how she used them in the game and how that wasn't a hindrance to her, but was something that should be celebrated. And just hearing her talk about that as someone who is a very emotional person in real life, someone who struggles with a lot of the same things that Marianne had voiced, and was nervous about coming in on the show, and the big personality, it was just really incredible to watch and to see. And I was so very, very happy with her win, knowing that she was someone that I resonated with, and I know that a lot of people I was really close with resonated with as a win, and it was great. It was great. Like I said, none of them she wouldn't have been robbed. Jen win, but definitely who I was pulling for in that endgame stretch.
Big agree. Marianne's story is, I'm doing this for the weirdos. She tells us very early on, I'm not used to being in the cool crowd. I was picked on. People made up lies about me and rumors and stuff like that. I can't get a guy that I like. I always get ghosted. Oh, she's telling you all the things. And I think anybody who's ever felt those things can connect to Marianne and say, man, I've been there too. People say I talk too much. People say I'm loud. People say I'm too goofy. All these things. And you're like, yeah, me too. I get it, And then to see her, as small as she is, navigate the game, and do so well. I think it just makes your heart smile. It really does. I think one of her biggest assets is her situational awareness, right? Like she can read the room and tell you like what's going on, who's around her, and what they perceive of each other. I think her weakest moments are at the beginning of the game where she doesn't know that her personality is so big that they're about to vote her out because of it. But once she hits the merge, she's able to get to the final tribal council and articulate everything because she's aware of what's going on. She knows exactly what she needs to say. That's why Coach was making fun of her, but she gets to the end and they say, all right, Marianne, tell us why you weren't doing this. And she's like, because all the women under 25 weren't doing that. You're like, okay, got you there. Okay, what about this thing? And she's like, well, that was strategic too. She knew those things. She knew to be ready for those questions in a way that Mike and Romeo probably were not. They both got caught up, and she was able to flip those things to advantage because she knows who she is. And that's one of the things that it felt so authentic. She gets to the end, she wins, and you're like, yes, because if you put Marianne in a lineup of all these Survivor players who have won, she's probably the person that you would think was least likely to win. She's tiny. She's a Black woman. Like, who would vote for this woman at the end? What did she do to get there? How did she make it happen? And she did it in a way that was flashy. It was fun. She wasn't malicious. She stood up for what she believed in, even to the detriment of her game, and she still packed them up. I'm sorry. I was jumping out of my skin excited for Marianne. I don't think I've been that excited in Survivor ever. Maybe since Jeremy. And Cambodia. Okay. Yeah, I think that one got me in a different spot. I was in a different place in my life at the time. But this one, I was a bit, no notes. She did what needed to be done.
We're gonna start to wrap this up, but I do want to point out just some of the other things that happened in the season that thankfully fuck off after the season's done. One is the do or die, which not the do or die. Do or die. Which
the Monty Hall problem.
Yeah, the Monty Hall problem. Which, thank goodness, we get 2 in a row of people just they're all right. They're all right. And I remember, I think Omer asked, like, "Oh man, like I wish Lindsay had not done it." Like whatever. We get rid of that. This is the last time we get this. This is the last time that we get the hourglass twist, which I think Julia brought it up earlier. At least they did it better this time because we didn't have to wait a week to obviously see Roxroy break the glass, because everyone's going to break the glass no matter what. No matter what type of narrative the production team tries to make us think, oh, they might go this way, they are always going to break the glass. We get rid of that. We do keep shot in the dark moving forward. We do keep hey, we're going to try to kill our players because it's 26 days, so we're not going to give them anything, and we're just going to have to, y'all just have to fend for yourselves. This is, this is the, it's very similar to Cook Islands, Fiji, where it's like, okay, we tried some things here, we tried some things here, and then we kind of reset for 15. I feel like 41 and 42, they were just testing the waters of what's going to work, what's not going to work, what are these people really hating, blah, blah, blah. And then 43 through 46, I feel like they found a happy medium of what they were going to keep and what they were not. Both of you, and Chappelle, we'll start with you. Are there twists that we have moving forward that come out of 41 and 42 that you are actually happy that they kept?
I think I'm happy that they keep this twist for a second and then they get rid of it. They get rid of knowledge is power. And I'm not a huge fan of it. Like, I don't think it was in the last season where anybody's asking, like, hey, do you have an idol? Do you have an advantage? But they do bring it back in 43. I know that was a big deal in 43. They're all shuffling their advantages around because they don't want anybody to snatch it. But in this season, knowledge and power was very cool. You know, it's the Drea Boot episode, which is another one of my good final tribal councils, because Omer convinces Mike to give up his idol, which could have got Mike voted out, you know, just that quick. And Omer could have selfishly kept that idol. It would have been an incredible move. He didn't do it, but it would have been crazy, right? And I think that, like, moments like that really validate that twist. And so it comes back for 43, but I don't think it's been in 40. It wasn't in 46. I don't know if it was, I don't think it was in 45, and I don't even think it was in 44. And so I wouldn't be mad if Knowledge is Power came back, because when it works out like it did in this Drea boot, I just think that there's nothing, you can't ask for more. She was Survivor rich. She had all this stuff. And here she is trying to take Mike's last thing to get him out. He's the last obstacle she needs to get past. And all she has to do is ask him if he has an advantage or an idol. And they beat her to the punch, you know. And I think that if you have challenges that work out like that, then you bring them back, because I think there was the perfect amount of drama for that moment. And I think that it could pay dividends in the future.
Julia?
For me, it's summits. Maybe not necessarily like the summits in the form we see it, but especially in the era where we barely get swapped, or if we do, they're still to like the same small 3 tribes. Any opportunity to have different relationships form in the pre-merge that can hopefully pay dividends moving forward in different things developing in the merge, or something that I always love. I don't, like I said, necessarily like how they did it in 41, 42, of it being so much of an episode for this like one small decision making that they do with Shipwheel Island and all that BS. But I like how they've adjusted it moving forward in these later New Era seasons, and it's something that I am very interested to see how they rework as we get farther along in the New Era. Or just do a swap. Or just do a swap.
Or just do a swap. Yeah, swap be nice.
Just going off this question, for me, it would be Marianne, Mike Turner, Jonathan, sadly, Omer, Drea, and probably High.
No love for Romeo. He came in 3rd place.
I would put him over Jonathan, but like we do have to put Jonathan there.
You don't have to do nothing. This is your show.
I know. Okay. Jonathan's gone and Romeo's there. Well, if it was mine, I would have Lydia on front and center. But Julia, any differences before we're gonna wrap up? But
I would keep Romeo off, but I would replace Jonathan with Lindsay, just because I can't see Jonathan. I just can't do Jonathan on my DVD cover.
And we haven't given Lindsay her flowers. She's a badass. Lindsay's a badass, man. Mm-hmm. She's so like that. If we don't get Lindsay back for 50, which we probably won't, I think it's a misstep. I think that she's so good in challenges. She was strategic. She was social. She made it to the end. She probably would have won. And so, that's the fact that we don't get know that we're getting maybe like a Lindsay character back. I think that's a shame, because she was so good this season. I would put her on my DVD cover as well.
42 is if Survivor lasts another 50 seasons, I feel like 42 is going to be the Survivor Australia, as far as we're going to get most of these people back. Mm-hmm. And we get half of the cast back from Australia. I feel like that it's entirely possible that we can get half of an 18-person cast back from this season, because the cast is that good that we can all sit here and say. And that gets to our final question. Julia, if you were to pick 1 or 2 people from the season to play on 50, just your personal preference, who would it be?
My 2, Marianne and Omer. I think you can't do whatever the theme of 50 is, unless it's a second chance to. You cannot do it without Marianne. I think she just embodies everything that we would love in our Survivor winners. And I just need to see her play again. And then Omer, I gave my pitch for Omer before. I think he could do extremely well. I think he's someone who's capable enough of switching up his game, of what he did last time, to adapt to this all-star level cast. Those are the 2 I need on 50.
Yeah, I think those are number 1 and 2 easy. You know, I don't really think that you can make a decent argument to boot either one of them out of the way because they were just so good. Marianne's a character. She's strategic. She won. And we've never seen anybody like her, but you could say the same exact thing about Omer, except for he didn't win. And so to see him come back a second time, I think we'd be great. You know, I think that those two people are very close. I'd love to see them working a lot closer in this game than they did the first time. They didn't know each other the first time like that. So they worked closely together. But now I think they're kind of like siblings. They're really, really close. And so I would love to see them on maybe on separate tribes to see how they interact without each other. But yeah, I can't see myself like if I can't pick the same two people that she picked, I definitely am going to go with like maybe like Mike Turner and Lindsay, you know. But like it for me, Omer and Marianne are just number 1 and 2 easy.
Yeah, I would say Omer. I was just switch it up a little bit. I won't say Marianne, but I would have. I would say Omer and Mike Turner. Fuck it, whatever.
And Mike will be won't Mike be almost 60 by the time that happens?
Yeah,
like,
he's 57 here. So
yeah.
Okay, so in that case, give me Omer and Lindsay. Just give me Omer and Lindsay. I feel like the archetype for Lindsay is small enough that she could actually do it. So give me that. Final thoughts on the season. Y'all can just briefly final thoughts on the season. I'm going to give my rating, and then we will bounce. Julia?
Okay, I'll go. Yeah, my favorite by far of the New Era seasons. When I think about like moments in Survivor history, if you ask me like think moments you love of Survivor, like there's a running thing in my head, and one of those first things I'm going to think of is Marianne pulling out that idol at Final Tribal Council. I was like, actually, I know I would have been safe, and just the look on the jury's face. It's an incredible season. I think it is one of the best newbie casts that we've ever had. I feel very comfortable saying that. Characters were great, strategy was great, and we had some great moments that took me back to what initially made me fall in love with Survivor, and the fact that it is this social experiment. At the end of the day, it is the giant social experiment, and we got that in the way that felt organic and it felt right. I just love it. Great season.
Yeah. Easily my favorite season of the New Era. My favorite winner of the New Era. So I'm automatically going to be biased toward this season because if anytime I get to see Marianne win the game, I mean, it's just such an emotional journey that I don't think you can repeat in a lot of seasons. A lot of seasons, like the person that you want, that you just long so bad for them to win, they don't make it or something happens, you know. But here, you got it. Like you're rooting for her. You see her struggles. It's almost Shakespearean. We saw her at her lowest. She's crying. She's talking about how she's getting left out and how nobody picks her. And like by the end, she's scooping up all these votes. Like, how can you beat that? Everybody else on the cast is literally insane. They're all playing so hard. I'm telling you, Chanel is a madman. Like she is crazy throughout this game. She's like selfish about her advantages. She's doing this, she's doing that. She's not telling anybody, and it's fun to watch. You know, Mike Turner is out here playing hard. Jonathan and Lindsay are this 2-person battle for supremacy when it comes to these channels. There's something to like on every episode. I don't think there's one boring episode. I can't think of one today. Right.
They flow so well. Like I was like, all right, cool, yeah, I'm in.
It's the world's easiest watch. Like it's just so easy. This is a top 10 season of Survivor for me, and it's not debatable. Like top 10. I don't know where it ranks in the top 10, but I can confidently say that I'm fed with this one, and I'm very happy. This makes this case for the New Era easily. Like the 41. I think you could go out of 41 saying like maybe the New Era might be. You know, Jeff's doing a lot. There's a lot of preaching. It's a lot of advantages, a lot of craziness. 42 says, no, let's solidify that we're back. Survivor's back. Let's see what comes next. So that's how I feel. 42, no notes.
I love this season. I love the cast. I think that this is a season that when I did this before, when I did 42 and 42, I still I didn't appreciate it that much the second time watching because that was the day that I live streamed throughout the day. So I had people on all day. So I wasn't able to pay attention as much as I wanted to. Today, you know, because I've got 3 or 4 more days left, I was able to actually pay attention again. And great. It's not in my top 10. I'm going to give it a 4.25 out of 5, which would put it right now through 42 seasons. It's number 12.
Hey,
it's number 12.
I need to know what's in front of it.
Philippines is right above it. Borneo is right below it.
I need to know what's the list.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, if you were right now, the top 10 would be Here's Villains, Dave vs. Goliath, Cambodia, Pearl Islands, Cagayan, Micronesia, Winners at War, Blood vs. Water, Tocantins, Vanuatu.
Okay.
War has consistently fallen down the list every time I've done this.
I'm glad Vanuatu is still up there as the original Vanuatu truther on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's just so great to see it so high up on your list.
Yeah.
Paul, do you have anything going on with the recap kickback that you want to tell?
Oh, well, first and foremost, nice meeting you, Julie. And thank you. And thank you, Coach, for having me. This has been so much fun. Yeah, I have recapkickback.com. That's where I podcast primarily. It's my home. It's where I talk about whatever I want to talk about. And so you can come and watch me do what I do over there. A lot of times I'm highlighting Black media, but other people of color media as well. And then also just whatever's popular. So Mari and I are talking about House of the Dragon every week on there. It's a great time. We have that weekly coverage. Every Monday, we should have a podcast out about that. And then every week, I'm talking about various other topics. Gia Worthy and I talk about Abbott Elementary sometimes, whenever that season's out. Sasha Joseph and I have talked about Summer House. Puya and I are talking about Bel Air soon. So we got a lot coming your way on Recap Kickback. So you have to go and subscribe, recapkickback.com/subscribe, and go to our YouTube page as well, youtube.com/@recapkickback. Hit that subscribe button and that like button and show some love. And yeah, tell me what you want me to talk about and I'll talk about it. You can also catch me on RHAP talking about various other topics. Big Brother's coming soon. Below Deck. I've seen some of the Below Deck fans in the chat here. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, check me out and then follow me on all social media at Recap Kickback.
Chappelle's a team green for House of the Dragon, which is all right, it's fine. But I will say my favorite piece of content that you've put out over the last year is the Black theme song bracket in March. It was very fun looking at our folks look at pick. I think I put on there. I was like, oh, you're forgetting about the PJs. But both of y'all, thank you so much for making this probably one of my favorites that I have done through 42 days. I've got 4 days left of this, y'all. We are in the end game. We've got tomorrow, which I'm excited for Jesse. I'm excited. Thank you to everyone in the chat. Thanks to everyone that has continued to support this through the last month and change. And we will see you guys on the other side.